He showed the inside of his nose and his ears to the world for fun. He made a video about Vaseline interesting. He doesn't make videos, he makes experiences. He is the most interesting biotech YouTuber in the world. I don't always smell stuff, but when I do, I prefer the Menthol Vapor Inhaler. Stay ready to smell, my friends.
Hit it. Allergy season is finally upon us. That means runny noses, red dry eyes, and sneezing like a dragon. For me, my nose gets super congested and it feels like someone is pinching it so hard that no air can go in or out of my nose. It feels like all that gunk in my nose is building up and marinating like some disgusting stew.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the f***? Get your ass.
I decided to try an easy solution to fix my congestion problems. So I went to Wally World and I found this thing right here, which is a vapor inhaler. And I'm just a little bit cheap, so this isn't an advertisement. I just found the cheapest solution to fix my problems and I decided to try it out on camera right now. So let's get to it. So the inhaler is actually very simple. It's only made up of 2 or 3 parts. You got the cap, and then you have the actual inhaler itself. So the actual inhaler is a plastic tube, and inside this plastic tube there's a small pad made of something like cellulose or polypropylene, and this pad is soaked with a chemical compound called menthol. So menthol is a primary ingredient in many yummy flavors like peppermint, spearmint, and insect repellent. And menthol is that ingredient that gives it that minty kick, that minty flavor, that minty pizzazz. It's the ingredient that makes the flavor that you all know as mint. But how do you recognize that this inhaler gives off a mint flavor when you don't actually eat anything? And how does any of this have anything to do with allergies or decongestion? So it all starts when the user sticks the inhaler up their hopefully clean nostrils and they inhale. Now when the inhalation happens, the air from their inhalation will pass over the inhaler and more specifically over the pad in the inhaler. When the air passes over the pad that has the menthol in it, the menthol, which is currently in a liquid state in the pad, will make contact with the air and it will immediately evaporate into your inhalation breath and it will be swept from the pad up your nostrils when you inhale. And this process happens super easily because menthol particles have a high vapor pressure, which means that they'll evaporate from a liquid on the pad to a gas as soon as they make contact with the user's breath. The craziest part happens when the menthol vapors reach the upper part of your nose once it clears the jungle of mucus that terrorizes the rest of your nasal cavity. In your upper nose, there's a very small tissue called the olfactory epithelium. And this tissue contains millions of little receptors called olfactory receptor neurons, which are also known as your smell receptors. So when the menthol vapors make it to the olfactory epithelium, it'll pass over this tissue and bind to the receptors on the tissue. And if it's a recognized smell, which it should be, because if you don't know what mint smells like, what have you been doing your entire life? But assuming that it is, the menthol vapor particles will not only bind to the complementary receptors, but it'll actually cause a conformational change in the receptors, meaning that the receptors will undergo some chemical reaction that makes it change its shape, kind of like a lock and key effect. The change in shape to a receptor particle, when it recognizes a familiar odor particle, will result in the receptor sending an electrical signal to the brain, more specifically to the olfactory bulb at the base of your brain.
In this case, the menthol interacts with the TRPM8 and TRPA1 receptors, which are responsible for letting the body know that there's a cool, soothing sensation going on, which helps to alleviate allergic symptoms, especially those that bother the respiratory system like coughing or congestion. These are those 2 receptors that give you that cool, chill, zen feeling that you associate when you eat a mint or chew a minty gum.
So we've covered how the inhaler might make you feel better or convince your body that you feel better by sending relaxing, cool signals to the brain that are activated by the menthol particles. But how does this thing really clear up the congestion in your nose and treat the other symptoms that come with allergies?
The inhaler actually targets another type of receptor called the alpha-3 beta-2 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor.
So when the menthol vapor particles pass over this specific receptor, it'll cause a conformational change in it, and then this receptor will send a signal to a specific part of the brain called the medulla oblongata. And the medulla oblongata is the part of the brain that's responsible for controlling breathing and respiration processes in the body.
Once the medulla oblongata receives a signal from the receptor, it relaxes the smooth muscle cells that line the walls of your airways, and it limits your nasal, submucosal, and goblet glands from secreting mucus. These two changes allows your airways to open up more, and it lets more air pass through your airways, which results in you having an easier time breathing, where you're not wheezing like a donkey.
Little disclaimer, I bought this thing over the counter, meaning it's good for temporary relief. But if this isn't providing a long-term solution to your symptoms or your problems with allergies or other respiratory problems, you should probably consult a doctor who can provide you a better long-term solution, because as good as this thing seems, it's not the solution to every problem. Congrats, you beat the big bad decongestion monster. Go smell stuff.